McQueen leaned against the bar and looked directly at Frank Sinatra. The Copa room held its breath as two different kinds of power measured each other across expensive carpet and cigarette smoke. Then McQueen's voice cut through the jazz music with surgical precision. "Your kingdom ends at this room, Charlie. On screen, mine begins." The Sands Hotel went completely silent. If you respect the real Steve McQueen, subscribe to Steve McQueen Untold Legacy. November 1959. Las Vegas, Nevada. The Copa room at the Sands Hotel, where Hollywood royalty gathered to see and be seen. Crystal chandeliers casting shadows over mahogany tables where careers were made and destroyed with whispered words. The air thick with Cuban cigars, expensive cologne, and the weight of social hierarchy. Frank Sinatra, 44 years old, sitting at his corner table like a king holding court. The chairman of the board, Rat Pack leader whose approval could launch careers and whose disapproval could end them. Surrounded by admirers who laughed at his jokes and agreed with his opinions. Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr., Peter Lawford. The inner circle of American entertainment. Steve McQueen, 29 years old, standing alone at the curved mahogany bar 30 feet away, nursing whiskey neat and watching the performance with cold attention. Fresh from Wanted Dead or Alive, the television western that had made him recognizable but not yet a movie star. Two different approaches to power meeting in neutral territory. The evening had started with typical Vegas elegance. Industry professionals working the room like sharks, sensing opportunity. Agents managing introductions. Publicists controlling conversations. But real power emanated from Sinatra's table, where laughter carried genuine influence and conversation could change careers. McQueen had arrived alone. No entourage, no publicist. Just walked in wearing a perfectly tailored suit that somehow looked dangerous, ordered his drink, and positioned himself to observe without participating. "Steve McQueen," called Sinatra's voice, smooth as aged bourbon. The power table went quiet. When Sinatra spoke, people listened. When he issued invitations, people accepted. When he offered lessons, people learned. McQueen looked over from the bar, made eye contact across 30 feet of expensive carpet, nodded politely but didn't move. "Steve, come over here. Time you met some important people." Not a request. An expectation from someone who'd never been refused. McQueen finished his whiskey, set the glass down with deliberate care, walked to Sinatra's table with measured pace. "Charlie," he said, offering a handshake that was professional but not deferential. The table went cold. Nobody called Sinatra Charlie. Not in public. Not ever. "It's Frank, kid. Sit down. Join the grown-ups." The comment carried an edge everyone recognized. Subtle reminder about hierarchy and who belonged in which category. McQueen remained standing. "Thanks. I'm comfortable at the bar." "Nonsense. You're in the big leagues now." "Time to learn how things work." Dean Martin sensed trouble brewing. "Steve's got that new Western series. Very popular." "Television," Sinatra said, like the word explained everything about artistic legitimacy. "Charlie, let me give you some advice about this business." "What's that?" "First, respect the hierarchy. Some people earn their position through hard work and proven success. Others are just getting started." "Which am I?" "Learning category. For now." McQueen looked around the table. Talented people who'd achieved success through ability and political navigation. People who understood that entertainment was relationships as much as performance. "Appreciate the advice, Charlie." "Second, know your place. Television builds name recognition, but movies make real careers. And movie careers require the right connections. People like you? People exactly like me." Sinatra leaned forward. "Third, attitude matters. Humility opens doors. Arrogance closes them." McQueen was quiet for a moment. Interesting perspective. "Fourth, loyalty is everything. People remember who supported them and who didn't." "I can see that, especially for someone trying to transition from television to serious film work." The offer was clear: Sinatra as mentor and patron. Alliance that could accelerate career development in exchange for appropriate deference. Charlie, can I ask you something? Sure. Do you think talent matters? Sinatra smiled with practiced confidence. Talent is important. But talent without connections is talented unemployment. What about authentic performance? Everything matters, but understanding what matters most separates professionals from amateurs. McQueen nodded. Makes sense. Good. So when you're ready for serious film work, we can discuss how that happens. Generous offer. I believe in helping talented people find their way. McQueen looked directly at Sinatra. Charlie, where does authentic performance fit in your system? What do you mean? Performing because you understand the character versus performing because someone told you how to behave. The table grew uncomfortable. This wasn't grateful acceptance of wisdom. This was interrogation. Authenticity is important, but so is professionalism. Professionalism means understanding how business operates. What if they conflict? Then you make them compatible. What if they're not compatible? Sinatra's patience showed stress fractures. Successful people make things work, or they choose which matters more. And which matters more to you? McQueen stood slowly, natural authority of someone who'd reached a conclusion. I think authentic performance is the only thing that survives. Everything else is politics that gets forgotten. That's naive thinking. Maybe political thinking makes authentic performance impossible. McQueen walked back toward the bar. Not quickly, not rudely, just moved with measured purpose. Steve, Sinatra called. McQueen stopped, turned back. Charlie, in this business you're either part of the system or fighting it. People who fight the system usually lose. McQueen leaned against the bar, rested his elbows on mahogany that had supported more industry deals than most studio boardrooms. Charlie, I think you're right about the system. Good. But I think you're wrong about losing. How's that? Your system only works in rooms like this, where people need each other's approval, where hierarchy matters more than performance. And you think that doesn't matter? Not on screen. When lights go down, audiences don't care about Hollywood politics. They care about believing what they see. Star power comes from the system you're criticizing. Star power comes from the screen. Everything else is business that happens around it. Sinatra stood up, reached his limit with philosophical discussions questioning his fundamental approach. Kid, you're talking theory, I'm talking reality. Maybe they're the same thing. They're not. Thinking they are keeps talented people unemployed, while less talented people become stars. McQueen leaned against the bar, with increased relaxation. Charlie, when you perform, do you perform for the audience or for industry people watching? I perform for everyone. But if you had to choose... Sinatra was quiet. Understanding the question exposed the difference between authentic performance and strategic career management. I perform for people who can help my career. Right. I perform for people who buy tickets to see something real instead of something manufactured. Idealistic thinking won't pay bills. Honest thinking won't require me to pretend to be someone I'm not. The room was watching. This had moved beyond mentoring into philosophical warfare. Let me explain something you don't understand, Sinatra said. I'm listening. Power in this business comes from relationships, from people who control projects, financing, distribution. That's reality. Your reality. Industry reality. McQueen looked around the room. At successful people who'd built careers through strategic relationship management. At wealth and influence that came from navigating Sinatra's system. Charlie, you're absolutely right about how power works in this room. Thank you. But this room isn't where my power comes from. Where does it come from? From the screen. From audiences who decide whether they believe performances or not. You think you can build a career on that? I think I can build a career that matters. Sinatra walked closer. Close enough for private conversation. Kid, I've been in this business 20 years. Talented people come and go. The ones who succeed understand talent isn't enough. You need allies. People like you? Exactly like me. McQueen leaned against the bar with complete relaxation. Charlie, I understand what you're offering. Alliance with established power in exchange for recognition of that power's legitimacy. That's how business works. Your business, not necessarily mine. What's your business? Authentic performance that doesn't require anyone's permission except the audience's. Not sustainable without industry support. Maybe industry support isn't sustainable without authentic performance. Sinatra understood this conversation had reached an impasse. You're making a mistake that will limit your options, or making a choice that will define my career authentically. There's a difference between authentic and unemployed. Yeah. Authentic people don't pretend to be someone else to succeed at being themselves. Charlie, let me be clear about this business, Sinatra continued. I control who gets what opportunities. I decide who gets recommended for major projects. Cross me, and doors close. McQueen looked directly at the man who'd just revealed the true nature of their conversation. Not mentoring, threat assessment. That's impressive power, Charlie. It's real power. In this room. In this industry. McQueen pushed away from the bar, stood at full height with casual authority that somehow filled the space around him. Charlie, you control who gets invited to parties, who gets introduced to producers, who gets recommended for projects that already exist. Exactly. But you don't control what happens when cameras roll. You don't control whether audiences believe what they're watching. And you don't control whether performances are real or fake. I control enough. In this room, in every room that matters. McQueen smiled without warmth. The first genuine expression of emotion he'd shown all evening. Charlie, here's what I think. Your kingdom is impressive. Really. You've built something that commands respect and delivers results for people who understand how to operate within it. Glad you recognize that. But your kingdom has borders. Such as? It ends when the lights go down and the cameras start rolling. Sinatra's confidence flickered, understanding that McQueen was describing territory beyond his influence. Audiences don't care about your hierarchy. They don't know about your alliances. They can't be threatened or flattered or manipulated into believing fake performances. Star power influences audiences. Real star power comes from authentic performance. Everything else is just publicity that disappears when the movie starts. You're betting your career on idealistic theories. I'm betting my career on audiences recognizing the difference between real and fake. The room was completely silent now. Industry professionals understanding they were witnessing a fundamental challenge to established power structure. Sinatra made his final play, the nuclear option reserved for people who refuse to acknowledge his authority. Kid, let me make something crystal clear. I run this town. My word opens doors and closes them. My approval makes careers and destroys them. Cross me, and you'll find out how small this industry really is. The threat hung in the air like smoke from expensive cigars. McQueen looked around the room one final time. At the successful people who'd heard similar ultimatums and made their accommodations accordingly. At the wealth and power that came from understanding which battles could be won and which were suicidal to fight. Then he leaned against the bar with absolute relaxation. The gesture of someone who just heard something that clarified everything important about the conversation. Steve McQueen leaned against the bar and told Frank Sinatra, "Your kingdom ends at this room, Charlie. On screen, mine begins." Subscribe to Steve McQueen Untold Legacy for stories they never told you.